Hey everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I'm going to be doing a video about coloring. This is the sister video to the inking one I just released, so it's the same kind of thing, mistakes to avoid, do's and don'ts, that kind of thing. So I'll be drawing in the colors for two different girls. One I'll do the way that I actually like to do it, and one I'll do the way that I used to do it, making all the mistakes I used to make when I was a rookie. But first let's do a little color vocabulary. Right now I'm pulling the selector over to the point of highest saturation, meaning the purest and brightest color of yellow. When you pull it back, it gets grayer and less saturated. Up and down gets you light and dark. And along this line is the most saturated dark yellow colors you can get, and along the top are the lightest yellow colors you can get that are full saturation. Anything in the middle is the desaturated colors. So starting off, I'll do the don't girl first. Basically, I'm putting in her hair at full saturation, and then pretty much everything else at full saturation too. This is something I used to do a lot when I was first learning how to color. I'm not sure why, it just seemed easier for some reason. I would use a lot of pure, bright colors and flat blacks and flat whites, but that makes the contrast kind of too high on the whole image, and it kind of burns the retinas a bit. Our little Frankenstein girl's skin is just way too bright green right up against that red. It actually can be really distracting and unpleasant. And red and green are notoriously hard to put together in a nice way, which is why I picked them for this image. So on the good side, I'm using a grayish desaturated green that's light, so that when I put in her hair, it doesn't clash. It looks soft and okay together. The highest, most saturated color is her hair, and everything else I make sure to keep fairly light and pastel so that her hair can really shine and nothing is clashing with it. I'm also using an actual color palette that I keep at the bottom. This helps you not have to guess trying to match colors, so that can be really helpful. Obviously you can use the eyedropper tool also, but it's actually just really convenient to have your color palette right at the bottom. So as you can see, one of our girls is really just, she's popping off the page, but not in a super good way. It's kind of painful. Another good tip when you're coloring is to put something dark underneath them to see if there's any areas you forgot to color. So like the whites of her eyes were not colored, but now I've filled them in. And I'm not filling them in with a pure white. It's actually better to do a slightly off white, like a beige or a cool gray. It just makes the image look softer in the end, and it gives you somewhere to go if you need to put a highlight in those areas. Now on the don't side, I'm about to make a really common beginner's mistake. Basically, I'm trying to shade in with the burn tool. You can see that little patch under her eye that's gone a weird sort of ochre color. That's what the burn tool does. It just makes colors darker, but it's really hard to use, and I've never seen someone properly use it in an illustration. I certainly don't know how. The other thing I used to do to shade was to take a default fuzzy round brush in Photoshop and use black right onto my image, and that's how I used to shade. It's black doesn't really do you any favors when you're putting it on a colored image and you're shading that way. It just really it takes the life right out of it. Basically, colored shadows give you personality and black or gray shadows just don't, so it's not that you can't use them, it's just that it's better to use colored shadows most of the time, especially if you're trying to invoke some kind of emotion or time of day or something like that. So on the good side, I'm actually going to show you two different ways that I shade. There's a soft way and a hard way. So the first way is cell shading. This is sort of a hard shading method. It's used in animation a lot, and basically it's pretty simple. You just find all the areas where you need to create form, where shadows would fall, and you take a hard Photoshop brush. You pick a color. I picked pink, and then you put a layer above your image, above the colors, and you set it on multiply, and you basically just draw wherever you need shading, like a solid shape. So as you can see, it's a nice sort of harmonious way to shade, and it's very simple. It makes things look sort of like pop arty. They're very like, it's a little bit flat, but in kind of a charming way. Like I said, it's really commonly used in animation because it's easy to keep consistent, unlike more painterly kind of methods, which would be really hard to recreate in frame-by-frame animation. So with cell shading, you really need to be sort of precise, but you can use your line art to your advantage. Just follow and fill in any little areas that need shade. And the proper highlight to do with cell shading is usually like a strong white solid shape as well, and it gives it sort of that, again, like sort of pop culture plastic anime kind of look, and it can be quite cute. And this is probably my default. This is like my go-to method of shading and highlighting. This is what I used to do. Again, I just took a straight up white and used that same brush that I used to shade with, and would draw like lines and bubbles all over her hair, and way too many in the eyes, and that's what I would usually do. It's uncanny actually how much the bad drawing looks like a drawing I did when I was 13. So now I'm going to show the other way that that I sometimes shade. This is the softer way. So if you think cell shading is a little bit too harsh looking, or just doesn't give you the right feel, this is another way you can do it. Basically, I'm taking a Kyle T. Webster brush, one of his oil brushes. I believe it's the Soft and Smooth. And I'm taking a darker red for her hair. I've selected all of her hair, and I'm just sort of brushing in with this sort of fake oil brush, and creating form that way. And this brush has a layering kind of effect, and it's kind of blendy, which is nice. It makes everything look a little more storybook. This takes a bit more time, but oftentimes it can give your image a little bit more of a sophisticated feel than cell shading. But like I said, I like them both. I think they both have really good application. On the face, I'm trying to brush in sort of a warm color to give her face life. It's actually kind of cool. When I do this on the warm parts of her skin, it looks extra sort of healthy. And then when you do it on top of green, because green and red are opposites, it grays it out, so it makes it look a little more dead, which is perfect for a little Frankenstein girl. Oh, I forgot to mention, we're doing this Frankenstein girl because the request this month on my Patreon was a monster girl, so that's what this is for. If you're used to cell shading and you're worried about going painterly, definitely it's actually quite an easy transition. You just have to do what you normally do with cell shading, and then take those edges and just soften them, and it pretty much instantly becomes a painterly image. Especially when you're using a painterly brush, it kind of does the work for you. So the main drawback of using a painterly brush is it takes longer, and it takes more going back and cleaning up because it does have those soft edges. So here's where we're at right now. The girls are looking quite different because our one has balance and the other one just does not, and she also has really messed up shading. But I honestly I used to draw exactly like that. Anyway, I'm putting in some shines. These are a lot softer, a lot less intense than the ones I did for the cell shading. Basically, I'm just using a light desaturated pink, and I'm brushing on little tiny strands that follow the theoretical hair. Obviously, we're not actually seeing it, we're just seeing sort of clumps, but you want to follow the path that you think the hair would be on. It gives it a nice texture. So she's looking quite good, I think. This is kind of the aesthetic that I prefer. So now that she's fully colored in, you can play around with backgrounds without worrying about them peeking through, because we already tried it out with that gray and got everything sorted. Here's just another quick little tip. When you're doing something in the background, try to make sure that the background elements are not too similar to the foreground elements, aka your character. So you see I'm moving that cloud because it was right up against her white sleeve. If we pull it down to where her sweater is, it actually helps that shape stand out instead of creating confusion with the white on white where it was right next to her sleeve. Alright, that just about wraps it up. I hope that this video was helpful in some way. Even if you don't agree with all my tips, some of them should be helpful, maybe? Hopefully. Or at least I hope you had fun. One last quick tip I want to talk about. If you create a adjustment layer and you turn the saturation all the way down on that, it'll show you what the picture looks like in black and white without actually permanently affecting it. And this will help you see if your tones are okay. As you can see, the red and the green are actually the same tone, which is part of the reason why that image isn't working that well. It's hard to tell when the color is there, but if someone colorblind looks at it, or even just the way our eyes perceive color, we don't like to see two colors that are that close in tone together. Thank you so much for watching my video. As some of you might know, I have a webcomic, and now that webcomic has t-shirts. So if you want to check them out, that would be super great. They're on Amazon, they're all legit, and I have one myself. It's pretty soft fabric and it's really nice. So if you're a fan of Unfamiliar, you might want to take a look. A big thank you to all my patrons, including CookieInsurance, @LivesLikesToDraw, Paynamel, Kaitlin Fosse, and Luna Sabroso. All those names are also down in the description. I appreciate your guys' support so much. Thank you.